Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the TravelMole broadcast in these COVID pandemic times. I would think, many people would think, that during these times that sustainability and responsibility would come to the bottom of the agenda as people actually just fight to survive. But for some companies, it's still very, very important. And I'm delighted to say today that I have with me Kasia Morgan from Exodus Travels, and she's going to explain to us what they're doing in terms of making sure that people are still going to be sustainable in these dreadful times. Good morning, Kasia.
Hi, Graham. Nice to be talking to you.
And you. Kasia, Exodus Travels, they're a group adventure travel company in the Travelopia empire, I suppose you would call it, with all the brands that you have. How are things at Exodus at the moment? I'm assuming there's no travel going on, but maybe there's some bookings for next year.
Yeah, that's right. Very quiet time on the travel front, a tough time as in any business to really think about trying to project what the coming year and years are going to look like and plan accordingly. But also kind of a time to really rethink kind of priorities and our business going forwards and how we do best structure ourselves for the opportunities and for travel to kind of get going again.
Good. I understand you've got a relatively new initiative going on that is going to help the communities in where you actually take people. You go into communities all around the world, if you like, interfere, but you actually get into their communities, you help them grow, you bring income to them. At the moment, obviously, that's not happening. Your new campaign is aimed at trying to alleviate some of the issues. Have I got the right idea there, or have I got the completely wrong end of the stick?
No, absolutely right. So actually Exodus Travels has had the kind of its heart for all of its 45 years, a kind of principle and ethos of really making sure that not only does it tread lightly with its travels, but it actually brings benefit to the communities, the people and places that we visit on our trips. March last year, we launched the Exodus Travels Foundation to kind of consolidate some of that work, some of those activities that were happening anyway, and advance them. And we launched just in the last couple of weeks our community KickStart project, which is a specific project based on the principle that we want to, through our networks on the ground, try to kickstart initiatives that are going to bring social impact in terms of conservation during these difficult times when we can't actually take our travellers to these places. And so what's really key is trying to do what we can from afar through our tour leaders, our operators, our suppliers on the ground, who are by far and away best placed anyway, to really see what the biggest issues and biggest local needs are, and then to implement them by using some of our funding to kind of work with their communities on the ground to, as you say, kind of bring some kind of relief and then some kind of initiatives to restart things as the world starts to open up again for travel.
Let's do them one at a time. The Exodus Travel Foundation, how is that made up? Who's on it? How is it appointed?
So it is led by 3 trustees currently. One of them is Pete Burrell, who was the chief exec of Exodus Travels for many years, so brings with him a wealth of knowledge about responsible travel and tourism. Another is Krista Cullen, who is an Olympic athlete and has been very involved, particularly in our kind of Kilimanjaro porter projects, the support that we're giving to especially female porters on Kilimanjaro. And another is our treasurer, Richard Isaacs, who brings a kind of financial know-how. And really, it's set up with a mission to improve life through travel in particularly hard to reach places, and not dissimilar to the Community KickStart project. It's a recognition that travel companies such as ourselves, with networks and reach into all different parts of the world, especially harder to reach places, can bring in positive impact, hopefully, and help and support and development for a lot of the parts of the world that perhaps some of the bigger NGOs actually don't get to reach. So it's really trying to use all the kind of skills and the networks that we have to bring positive impact to our destinations.
Okay, so from the KickStart campaign point of view, how is that funded? And once it is funded, who monitors or polices where that money is spent and how it's spent?
Yeah, so we've started, Exodus Travels has started by putting in a kind of seed capital, I guess a pot of money of £10,000. We have asked our clients and our kind of agent partners to help us double that pot, and they've been incredibly generous. In fact, we're up to £18,000 at the moment, which is fantastic. So we're almost there with that initial target. But this is a pot of money that we want to see grow and grow. It's actually a project that we want to stay a core and permanent addition to our foundation's work going forward. So we see a real potential there. In terms of the monitoring, it follows the kind of monitoring and kind of application and reporting and monitoring processes of the rest of our foundation. So we have behind the scenes the kind of paperwork and reporting and monitoring, which is managed by myself and some of us in Exodus Travels, and then overseen by our body of trustees as well. But there's a huge collaboration in the travel sector more widely amongst the kind of foundation NGO world to really kind of share knowledge on how best to do that, to do our due diligence, to make sure that we're monitoring impact and ensuring that these projects really do have a positive impact.
And you mentioned the £18,000. How can that be added to? Who's likely to add to that? What part of the travel supply chain? Would it be consumers? Would it be airlines? Would it be hotels? Would it be transfer companies? Who and what puts money into that pot?
So all of the above, I would say that as a fundraiser. At the moment, it's been incredibly generous kind of outpouring from our clients directly. And there's numerous ways in which they're doing that. At the moment, they're purchasing our cookbooks, for example, Exodus Travels cookbooks, and 100% of those proceeds go to our project, for example, giving direct donations. So certainly our consumers, and we've seen that over the years, actually the Nepal earthquake showed that our clients were kind of hugely generous in wanting to support. After that disaster, they donated over £250,000 towards that. So primarily our clients are kind of community, I guess, of responsible travellers. But yes, absolutely, we're keen to kind of work with our agent partners as well, and any kind of suppliers and so on who see either the ability and capacity to donate to this kind of project, but also the ability and capacity to go out to their own networks to look at kind of sponsored events, etc. So yeah, we're really keen to kind of work with any of our wider community to kind of raise funds for this initiative.
Okay, and do you have any immediate plans with that 18,000? Could you give me an example of what it might be used for?
Yeah, so we've
one small example.
Of course, we've actually got kind of 9 initiatives actually already funded through this project. And to give you one small example, one of our tour leaders, Y, in Malaysia, Y has been involved with the setup of a community garden in and around a community that our travellers sometimes go through. And that is a community garden that helps kind of engage and feed the 360 low-income households that live round about. And our fund is helping to implement a rainwater harvesting system so that they no longer have to use kind of scarce kind of water resources for the garden, to irrigate the garden, but also to help in that engagement and education around kind of environmental care, continuing to help run their kind of workshops on growing your own fruit and veg for local children and kind of local families and so on. So that's just a little example of a very grassroots initiative, primarily led by one of our own tour leaders, that this community kickstart initiative can really kind of help with that recovery of those communities that have been hit by the kind of negative impact, economic impact of COVID.
There's lots of charities, there's lots of initiatives, foundations involved in this type of work. Why do you feel it's necessary for Exodus to have it under your own control? Why don't you just give the £18,000 to Just a Drop or to some other charity that's doing good work?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, some fantastic organisations out there, both within and outside of the travel sector, doing great work. Do you know, I think it was actually, I go back again to the Nepal earthquake that really seeded the idea for our own foundation. Because we set up at the time, a fundraising page was set up, and the thought was that clients might donate, a few £100 to put out through our leaders on the ground who were able to tell us exactly what was happening on the ground in their communities, and able to get aid to small remote communities that the NGOs weren't reaching yet. But because of that unique ability, I suppose, through those networks, through the access to reach those hard to reach places, we found that our clients were donating to us over and above the Red Crosses, the kind of amazing kind of aid organizations that were reacting at the time, just because of that kind of local experience that many of them had had meeting those people and going to those places, and because of that kind of access, local intel, I suppose, that we had the ability to get the money out there. So I guess for us, it was just a recognition that our kind of clients and our networks, our agents, felt that there was something that we could do that perhaps was distinct from some of the more kind of traditional kind of NGOs, and a desire to kind of consolidate some of that work that we had already been doing into something more strategic, more well monitored, and more well thought out in terms of our kind of plans and goals for the future.
Now, one of the things that Exodus obviously have, as you've said, have been involved in, and has as an ethos really been involved in sustainability and making sure that the communities you visit bring good, if you like, that a lot of the economic benefit is recycled in the local economy. I think it's fair to say also, and I posed this question to one of your colleagues, Sam, a couple of weeks ago, that Exodus is perhaps not as well known as perhaps it could be with regard to that work. Do you think that's a fair comment? Yes and no. I mean, I would say that we've been in a real process over the last year of finding exactly what our focus should be, working out the areas that we have actually kind of been doing a lot over the last number of years that actually our clients do know us kind of quite well for. So a lot of that community empowerment work and the kind of conservation and wildlife work, and highlighting, building awareness about that, but also figuring out where we want to be kind of advancing further. So particularly on the kind of environmental impact side of things. So yes, absolutely. We love the opportunity to highlight some of the great kind of examples from over the years and over the past year as well. But we also recognise that we have big kind of challenges ahead of us. And we really want to kind of, before kind of going out there and speaking too loudly and too frequently about our kind of sustainability credentials, we really want to make sure that we have in our own minds, our goals kind of clearly set, and that we're implementing them. And we're actually doing this stuff on the ground as well as speaking about it. So yeah, so I think we'd love to do more to kind of engage our audiences and networks and tell them about what we're doing and involve them in that. We also want to make sure we're really doing the work on the ground. Good. Well, Kasia, thank you very much for your time. I wish you the very best. It's a very admirable campaign that you've set up here, and I must admit, we think we're doing badly here in the UK in the travel industry. And if you're in a small community in Nepal, it must be dreadful at the moment with no income at all. And I wish you the very, very best of luck. And if there's anything else we can do in order to help you along the way, then obviously just speak to us.
Thanks so much, Graham.